So we're going to go from a village to a tier 1 city, from Maharashtra to South India. And so we're going to welcome Vishwanath to discuss the experience in Bangalore. So now, his introduction in your brochure is pretty sober. He's presented as the founder of the Rainwater Club. He's actually a man of many caps. He is an advisor to Argan, about which you will learn more this afternoon. He is also he has a YouTube channel with 1 million hits, Zenrainman, which you can also check out and tweet about. He's importantly a policy advisor to the government, and he was instrumental in bringing rainwater harvesting to the city of Bangalore. And finally, he's an encyclopedia on water issues. If you want to have fun during the break, I encourage you to ask him pretty random questions on water, such as how many feet emptying vehicles in Maharashtra, or how many boreholes in India, or that kind of questions, and you'll be amazed to find that he actually has the answers to all of that. Vishwanath.
It's like batting up to Sachin Tendulkar. पोपटराव पवार जी को पहले बुला के मुझ पे ज्यादती हो रही है यहाँ गोदरेज ग्रीन वाले की तरफ से। मैं क्या बोलूँ, थोड़ा सा अपना अनुभव शेयर करूँगा। I'll share a bit of my experience। और पोपटराव जी, आप के कांदे हम लोग रोज मसाला डोसा भी खाते हैं, और तो रोज आपकी याद आती है जब हम डोसा खाते हैं। तो that is from Bangalore to Hivre Bazaar। And for those who have not gone to Hivre Bazaar, and those who have not sort of followed what was happening when Popatrao ji was speaking, that is a pilgrimage spot for water and groundwater and watershed management. It's not very far, and it's really recommended that you go and see the actual transformation in the village. And it is a dream for India and a vision for India that all the 600,000 villages of India should be following the model of Hivre Bazaar, and then we will not have any water scarcity, for sure. Especially in the year of a drought, Hivre Bazaar should be remembered. Let me just share a bit of my experience and a bit of my ideas around water management, and specifically a bit with reference to Bangalore, but also generally in India. And I sort of make this point that the narrative or the stories that we tell ourselves define the problems, and therefore then define the solutions. One of the things that we must remember in India is that we are a groundwater civilization. And again, the numbers come up again. There's 30 million bore wells in India, 250 cubic kilometers of water being pumped out every year. 250 cubic kilometers of water being pumped out of the ground every year, making it the world's #1 groundwater user. By far, the next user is way behind. It's 110 cubic kilometers, so it's way behind. So we are significantly a groundwater civilization. And you have the numbers also that the total water use from groundwater is about 60 to 65%. And drinking water use is significantly again groundwater, especially in the rural villages and in the urban areas. The only source for recharge is rain. And the history spans and tells us about it, because 2900 BC, if you go to Lothal, an urban civilization with drainage, sewerage, and open wells. And the old people had realized, even on the banks of the Indus or on the banks of the Saraswati, that the way water reached them was through an open well. And that open well provided the filtration, provided the water at the doorstep. And this was 2900 BC. So from 2900 BC, when we dug the first open wells, to now in Hivre Bazaar, where 130 open wells are full of water because of watershed, there's a continuity. And that continuity is one of sustainability. When we talk of sustainable technologies, what could be more a sustainable technology than open well, which was relevant to 2900 BC and is relevant today, and is seen not only as functional, giving water, but also an indicator of groundwater levels and depths. And what we want is water in our wells. This is what I would like to put. Look at another interesting open well. Sarnath, the Buddha gave his first sermon in the deer park to 7 people in Sarnath near Banaras. And if you go there, there is still an open well. The question to me and to all of us is, did the Buddha drink from this? Because the well has water and the water is sweet. So are we blessed or lucky enough to be using the same source of water as Gautam Siddhartha, the Buddha? So the continuity and the span and the reverence, and somewhere along the line we've forgotten the memory of the open well. That is my submission to you, because there's no signboard here explaining what this is all about in the whole Deer Park. Or Ashoka's edict, 250, 300 BC. Read the edict, Dhauli. This is from Dhauli in Orissa, where the Battle of Kalinga was fought, and it says plant trees, dig wells. So this was seen as the act of an emperor, this was seen as the act of the state, and this is the sort of space we are coming from. So to me this narrative is very important, because we have to remember and learn from history as we go along. Or if we read about King of Mahendra and Sanghamitra, Ashoka's son and daughter, who went to Sri Lanka and took with them the Bodhi tree, a branch of the Bodhi tree from Bodh Gaya, and planted it in Anuradhapura. And if you go to Anuradhapura, you see the well, and the well is next to the Bodhi tree, and the well has water, and it's a keystone-shaped well. And the construction practice followed in that open well in Sri Lanka is the same as in Bihar or in Bengal or in that part of the Magadha Empire. Again, talking continuity. And therefore, I come to this present day well in Bangalore, which still has water. That's where I come from that space to here. And look at it, metaphorically speaking, we must go back to the culture of the well. Because the well is the only construct around water which talks to us. It tells us, for example, that summer is coming. The water levels start to go down. So you must now start to alter your behavior. You cannot grow the rabi crop, you cannot grow the summer crop, because water levels are going down, the resource availability is getting less. There is a communication signal of the ecological scarcity of a resource, and therefore a chance to alter your behavior. With the tap, with the bore well, that communication signal is lost. From the tap, we do not even know where the water is coming from, let alone what is the state of the reservoir or the river or wherever it comes from. But with the well, you have, metaphorically speaking, a great communication signal, and it's no longer 135 liters per capita per day, come hell or high water. Whether it's January, August, or December, 135 LPCD. The standard consumption, that is what we design our systems around, that standard is broken because it has to respond to an ecological imperative. The well also rewards you. Like in Hivre Bazaar, if you do good watershed, if you understand hydrogeology, if you recharge, if you do blasting and expand the aquifers, the well will be full and will therefore help you tide over crises. The well also punishes you. If you chuck garbage around, if you pollute, if you dump oil and grease, the well will reflect it immediately. So the well is a great communicator as much as it's a functional one. This one, for example, has seen good watershed work. This is in Kolar district, a district which is in Karnataka said to be drought prone, and where there's a clamor now to divert the west flowing rivers to come to this district. The west flowing rivers of the state of Karnataka to be diverted 250 to 300 kilometers to come here so that there be water. But when people work around with water, the wells are full, and the wells are full in May. How is it that we do not see what we can do locally, but we talk about broader diversion possibilities beyond me? And some of you may have seen this. Some of you may have seen this. The Persian wheel, actually the Indian wheel, something called the Aragatta, now called the Rehead. The Aragatta is the Sanskrit word spoke and pot, and then it becomes the Rehead. And from India, from somewhere around Sindh, Rajasthan area, it goes to 100 countries, and then disappears in its own country because of modernity. And I'm not sort of throwing feedback around the idea. Some of you may have observed this. Now look at what was happening. This can draw water from about 60 feet maximum, no more. It can irrigate 2 hectares, no more. Limits. And as a pump, this damn thing is more efficient than the electric pump, because if you take care of the plant load factor at the thermal power plant, if you look at the transmission and distribution losses, and then you look at the pump efficiency, at the end of it all, the water pumping is less efficient than in the modern pump than in this particular device. Yeah, and there also again there is this notion of limits and what ceilings. So this ceiling and limits are something that we have to start to grapple with as a society. And one good way of doing that is to price water. And that pricing of water should be the ecological price, where you return it back to nature at the same quality at which you appropriated it. Because if you do not do that, then water will always be a scarce commodity. Even though you run a business around selling water, you have problems. Because from there, where groundwater is now a visible resource, in the open well, groundwater is a visible resource and it's talking to you. We have now moved on to a technology which is the borewell. And in the borewell now this camera is going down 450 feet and is now looking at water. But the imagination of the people who use the borewell is that there is a river or a stream there, or a pool of water, or a lake there, and there are many streams which cut each other and so on, which is not hydrogeologically well informed. How do you then communicate to the users that this is the way in hard rock, in granite and in basalt, that it is in small cracks and fissures that water is coming in, and that it's a limited quantity, and the quality is also very tough to understand, unless our pumps speak to each other. Can we design smart pumps which can tell us how much water is there below in the aquifer? Can we design smart pumps which will tell us whether it has fluoride, arsenic, nitrate or iron? This could be the sort of modern technological challenge because we need our borewells to communicate to us, hydrogeologically and in terms of the groundwater availability. And the well in the cities provides for the poor, it's groundwater, broadly in many areas, because the poor are not connected to pipe water supplies. And in various forms, the well is a social equity measure. So if a city recharges its groundwater and brings it up, it is most likely to support the weaker section of the populace. So therefore, there's the social justice. And of course, then we have to understand the link between rain, surface water storage, recharge, and groundwater, and sustainable use, because all this will have to be conjunctly done at a watershed level or at a subaquifer level. And so Sripadri, my friend, takes this beautiful photograph which captures the catchment, conveyance, filtration, and storage, which is what rainwater harvesting is all about. Catchment, conveyance, filtration, and storage, which in the Western Ghats has been practiced for years. And so what do we do in the Rainwater Club? Well, we try to talk about this memory of water, the issue of groundwater. For example, in the city of Bangalore, there's a particular community called the Mannuvaddars, who specialized in digging wells and making these tanks. They simply lost their jobs because the wells are no longer a modern construct. Everybody is drilling a borewell. This whole community was jobless. But once the rainwater harvesting policy kicked in into the city and rainwater harvesting and recharge wells became compulsory, this community found jobs and livelihoods. And Muniappa, who's a member of the Rainwater Club, has dug more than 1,000 recharge wells. And his family is earning an income and is making a decent living. So policies that we frame around water can have livelihood impacts, can have employment impacts, and can also have technological impacts. Because when rainwater harvesting became compulsory in Bangalore, 40 filter manufacturers sprang up, innovating new ideas, new designs of filters, and they were making it as far away as Hardwar and Rishikesh and shipping it to Bangalore. So policies, private sector, entrepreneurship, and the commons being used together is crucial for what we do. The other things that we do is to work with government schools. There's a midday meal program running. The cooks, the ladies who make the meals, need water for many things, including washing the dishes, including for the cooking, but nobody actually bothers us to ask them where they're getting the water. So we build these rainwater tanks from the rooftop, and in this particular case for toilet use, but also for other uses in fluoride-affected areas to provide fluoride-free drinking and cooking water. Or in this girls' school for the midday meal and for sanitation program. So depending on the school, depending on the roof area, depending on the rainfall, depending on the need, you start to define rainwater harvesting and putting it into place so that the students understand why they're doing it and it's the school which maintains it and runs with it. Or for example, in these houses where 2,500 litre rainwater tank is made in the front of the house so that water is available at the doorstep. Now, during rainy season, the rainwater will fill in. In the non-rainy season, you can bring water from other places and store it in the same tank. But the storage level is, the height of the tank is made at such a place so that you can pour it from a pot. Because storage determines access. If you do not have storage, you do not have access to water. If you see many a poor rural house, water is stored in small pots all over the place, buckets. And that's all the water that they have. And the timing of the water supply is so infrequent that you do not have actually access to the water that actually comes into the taps and borewells. So storage is a critical part, it's not designed. And if we can do it multi-purpose with rainwater and for other devices, it can work better. Then we have to remember that there is no energy or electricity in our villages, most time in summer. How do you draw the water? So a hand pump based system or a tap based system is the best way to go in terms of design. do a hand pump, put it inside the midday meal cooking room in the school so that they use the hand pump to draw the water. And teach them how to repair the hand pump. Very important, even with washers and basic things. How do we, and luckily we have 1 or 2 hand pumps which are 500 or 600 rupees which do this work, but we need more robust technologies as we go along. And in cities, reinvent the memory of the well. We did a photographic exhibition in Bangalore, and we identified that there were something like 10,000 open wells in Bangalore. If you ask an average Bangalorean, he says that there are no open wells anymore. But people brought photographs and showed us, and we did an exhibition which was fantastic, very well received. There was a lot of dialogue. Now, this gentleman, for example, is recharging the open well that he has in his home with rooftop rainwater. And over years, it's now providing him the entire year's water supply. So from the open well, he gets all the water he needs. And look at it again, from the energy perspective, on the cost perspective. In Bangalore, water comes from 100 kilometers away and 500 meters below the city. So every kiloliter of water costs 24 rupees. From an open well, it costs 75 paisa. 75 paisa, because the head to which it's to be pumped is only 10 or 20 feet. Now, the higher the groundwater table that comes up, the large savings in energy, carbon emissions, and you name it. If wells have water, generally free from arsenic, nitrate, and fluoride. So the shallow aquifer and how we use it, how we understand it, how we recharge it is crucial to many of our cities. For one moment, I'm not arguing that this will be the only source of water. It will be a supplemental source, but it will be a crucial supplemental source. And we are not factoring this into our urban water planning as much as we should in India. Simple tests devised by an Indian, Manja, K.S. Manja from DRDO, the Manja strip test. You put water into this bottle, observe for 24 to 36 hours. If the water turns black, there is bacteria in it, you need to take care, precautions. If it doesn't, if it stays brown, drink the stuff. Now, this test should be available in every medical shop in India. It's a surprise that it's an Indian invention, the cost is so low, and we don't have it available everywhere. Why is it? Is the puzzling factor. Or, for example, that you can take water which is contaminated bacteriologically, put it in a glass bottle or a PET bottle, leave it in the sun for 5 hours, bring it in, cool it and drink it. It eliminates cholera, diarrhea, amoebic dysentery, and most bacteriological diseases. Solar disinfection. Why on earth, when we have this simple form of treatment, do we have 500,000 children suffering from diarrhea diseases and other things? This is mind-boggling. So how do we work on it? And in sanitation, we have also been working on what's called ecological sanitation or composting toilets, where you separate at source urine and feces and collect it in different boxes. And this is sort of do stuff like growing rice on the rooftop. Because at the end of the day, this is serious business, but this is also fun business. And if you don't have fun and if you don't enjoy what you're doing, the hell why you should be doing it at all. So how about all roofs in cities growing rice, using grey water, using eco-sand toilets, and you get a productivity of 1 kg per square meter. Popatrao ji, चावल छत पे 1 kg प्रति स्क्वायर मीटर, 100 स्क्वायर मीटर पे चावल डाला तो 100 kg चावल निकलेगा 3 महीने में, और साल में 4 क्रॉप निकाल सकते हैं. और इस क्रॉप के लिए पानी जो आएगा पूरा नहाने का पानी या वॉशिंग मशीन का पानी, और कुछ नहीं. और जो खाद आएगा वो हमारे कंपोस्टिंग टॉयलेट से खाद आएगा और कोई बाहर का टॉयलेट नहीं. तो शायद हिंदू साहब में भी थोड़ा सा जगह भी चालू करते हैं हम लोग ग्राम पंचायत ऑफिस के बारे में ऐसी सब चीज़ें, क्योंकि आपको देखने के लिए 500 लोग आते हैं हर रोज और 150-15 देश से आते हैं, तो वहाँ पे कुछ हो जाए तो वो फैल जाएगा सब जगह. And we also use mainstream media because we use YouTube channels effectively, Twitter. I've been told that I may get a prize for the Twitter thing, the best Twitter or something on Twitter. And then you propagate it using the newspapers and write about it. There's an excellent clientele which interacts with you to get your message across. And we were having a chat in the morning that generally in rooms like this, we're preaching to the converted. So those who already know, those who are already interested, come and talk. But how do we get across the message and get the fire lit amongst a larger and larger section of the population? That's what we need to do, because water is running out, and in our city we're finding out that even the rivers are incapable of supporting civilizations as they were. This is the Kaveri basin. We are fighting like mad over time, and we find that even the rivers and the dams on the rivers are not sufficient to provide water for cities. So it's running out at that scale. So we have to think local also as much as we think of the larger things, and we have to sort of think in a much more integrated fashion, where rainwater harvesting, wastewater recycling, groundwater and pipe water all combine together to provide the water that is needed for the cities. Because we have only not human beings to think about, but also, for example, a rat snake. A bowl of water placed somewhere outside will provide water for a rat snake too, and they too have a place in this world. So this is the day and age of every drop counting, because it's the blue planet, as was beautifully read out in the poetry, which should actually be called water and not earth. Thank you.